Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Meggitt Phillips, and I am the author of The Beast and the Bethany, Revenge of the Beast, and Battle of the Beast. It's a children's series about a young 500-year-old, a hungry beast, and a child who's going to be eaten. Today, we're here to talk about the Biblio-buzz Alexandra Palace Children's Book Award, and I am happier than someone who holds the power of infinity in the palm of their hands, because today we are joined by the wonderful shortlisted author, SF Saeed. SF, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for writing this absolutely brilliant book. For anyone who hasn't read Tiger, how would you describe this story?
Tiger, yes. Well, it's a story about a boy, a girl, and a tiger. But this tiger is no ordinary tiger. I think as the boy Adam and the girl Zadie get to know the tiger, they realize the tiger has powers they cannot begin to imagine, and the tiger begins to show them that they too have powers they can't begin to imagine. And together, maybe this boy, this girl, and this tiger can save the world.
Oh, brilliant. And I think it's a perfect mixture of sort of adventure and peril, and also sort of tackling the sort of larger themes of and the problems that we face in the world. This book was the product of 9 years of love and labor. I was just wondering, what were the biggest changes from the first draft to the final Tiger?
Wow, pretty much everything. I've got to say, one thing stayed the same, and that was the tiger. The tiger was there right at the beginning. A long time ago, when I was writing my last book, Phoenix, I had this idea for this tiger, and I just loved the tiger, but it didn't fit in Phoenix at all. So Phoenix is a book set in space among the stars, and a tiger on a spaceship, it just seemed wrong. So I just had to turn to the tiger and say, look, I think you're amazing. If you can just wait patiently over there, I will come back to you one day and write a book all about you. Tiger just sort of nodded and waited in the corner. I then went away and wrote Phoenix. When I finished Phoenix, I felt quite exhausted, but the tiger immediately growled and reminded me of my promise to write a book about the tiger. So I started writing, and I was just thinking, in what kind of world could this tiger exist? And the world, the characters, the main characters, all the other characters, I would say the time period, the genre, everything really changed again and again as I worked on the story. It is really a story about the idea of other worlds, this idea we have now in science, there could be an infinite number of other worlds. I love that idea. And every one of those worlds would be different. And you and I would be different. History would be different. London would be different. So, yeah, in the end, after 9 years of work, the world of Tiger really came into focus. So the story is set in London, in the present day, the 21st century, but in a strange alternate world that is not our world. And in that world, almost all animals are extinct. There are almost no animals left, certainly no tigers. Nobody has seen a tiger for a long time, but it is in that world that Adam and Zadie meet this impossible tiger. So yeah, the tiger was there from the beginning. The tiger was the kind of spark that started it all, but everything around the tiger evolved and changed the more I worked on it. And yeah, 9 years is a ridiculously long time to spend on a book, isn't it? But I really do feel it was worth it in the end, because this is the book I would most want to read. If I could have anything, this would be it. This would be the story I would most love to read myself.
And how do you sort of approach the sort of redrafting process? So, Tiger, I know with Far Jack Poor as well, and I imagine with Phoenix as well. Your books go through numerous drafts. Do you like to wait a while between finishing one draft and starting another, or do you sort of realize problems and just tackle it straight away?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, every writer does this stuff differently. Writing is not like science. We can't say here's the formula. If you follow it, you will always get these results. It's different for everybody. For me, well, what I really like to do on a first draft, I like to just jump in and discover the story as I go along. I don't really like to plan things out in advance. I make it up as I go along, and I try and set myself a very, very achievable target, something I feel I can do every day. But the important thing is to do it every day. So for me, I feel if I could maybe write 4 sides of A4 a day, it's about 1,000 words in my terrible handwriting. That's enough, and I don't really have to do anything else that day. That really generally only takes me about an hour. So I feel when I'm doing a first draft of a story, I'm really just trying to enjoy it. I'm trying to imagine the story I would have if I could have any story as a reader. I forget really about being a writer. I just think of myself as a reader and say, now, what do you really want to read about? And that's it. I just go for it. You know, whatever I find most exciting and inspiring, I just throw it all in there. When I finish my first draft, however, I put it away. I go off and I read loads and loads of other books. And then I come back to read mine. But when I do, I try and pretend I didn't write it. It's just another book like all the others. Actually, I just paid £12.99 to read it. And whenever I do that, I'm horrified and shocked at how terrible it is. I think, oh, there's a good idea here, but I wish the writer had done more. I wish it was more exciting. I wish it was scarier. I wish it was funnier. You know, all the things I want in a story, I begin to wish the writer had done more. So that's how I begin to edit, to analyze, to try and do everything I can just to make it better. And then I basically just repeat that process again and again. I do everything I can. I get it as far as I can. Then I put it away, take a good long break, read loads of other stories to remind myself of what I want a story to be like. Then I come back and read mine again, pretending I didn't write it. Costs me real money to read it, and we go again. And I carry on doing that again and again until finally, unbelievably, one day I'm reading it and I think, oh, if I'd paid £12.99 to read this, I think that was okay. This is a decent book. And at that point, I start showing it to other people, and then they give me lots and lots of helpful advice, which I then take away and try and make the book even better until the final thing is actually way beyond anything I'd imagined in the first place. That's the thing that I find really mysterious about writing is I started out with this idea of a tiger who can somehow cross worlds and dimensions, but I didn't really have a story around it. But the story that has finally ended up being in Tiger, yeah, I mean, that feels almost like it's always existed. And yet, you know, it developed and evolved draft after draft after draft. And now it feels completely inevitable. So I don't know, writing is a mystery.
Well, I think it feels like that as a reader as well. I think what the thing that people really respond to your books, it sort of has a sense of, as you're reading it, you're being transported. It's almost got like the logic of a myth or a modern day a new myth, and you're sort of reading it thinking, I haven't read this book before, and yet it feels as though this is a story that's been passed down from generations. But yeah,
myths are the best, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I do love actual ancient myths. I think they're brilliant. But, you know, I also love more modern stories that kind of create their own mythology. You know, you think about writers, for example, like J.R.R. Tolkien, who did The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, up to, say, Philip Pullman in his Dark Materials. I mean, to me, even, you know, say Mallory Blackman in Noughts and Crosses, she's kind of invented this whole other history for that other world. I love that kind of thought that has gone into creating you know, these histories, these stories. So yeah, if somebody comes away from a book like Tiger feeling that world could exist, that could be real, that mythology, you know, could be real, and also if it could make them perhaps look at our own world and begin to question it, and to ask themselves, how could this be different? I mean, I think that's the most powerful thing in the end that a book can do, make you look at your own world differently. I love that when a book helps me to do that myself. So if my books could help anybody else come away and feel, okay, how can the world be different? How can I change the world? That would just be amazing.
Well, I think it's the sort of thing. It's a terrible misquotation, but the way people talk about holidays, it's how it then sort of affects your home when you return from the holiday. That's a bit like reading. When you read a book and you get transported, and then you emerge from the pages and think about how it's changed. So in the London of Tiger, it's a London where the empire still reigns, and you've got factories belching out pollution and all that sort of stuff. How much of modern day London do you see in the London of Tiger?
Quite a bit. I mean, I think London, as we know it, can be a place of terrible pollution, violence, and greed. There's less and less public space, which I hate. But on the other hand, I think London can be a place of amazing openness and inclusiveness. Anybody can be a Londoner. I love that. I was not born in London. I was not even born in Britain. I was born in Lebanon in the Middle East. My family is originally from the Middle East and the wider Muslim world. I came to live in London when I was 2, so I don't have any memory of living anywhere else. But to me, I'm a Londoner, and anybody can be a Londoner. I love that. So I've put all of that into Tiger, but of course, because it is this other world with this other history where the empire has never ended, slavery has never been abolished. I think in many ways that's a London that is struggling a lot, and their technologies are really problematic. And so, yeah, I think it's like our London and it's not. It's as if seen through a glass darkly, as it were.
And the book has sort of many influences, as you mentioned, sort of Pullman, Mary Blackman, Tolkien, William Blake, of course. The one I'm most intrigued by was you in a recent interview you mentioned that you had a toy tiger as a child. How did that influence the book?
Wow, you've definitely done your research. Yes,
yes, obsessive googling.
Amazing. Yeah, I did have a toy tiger as a child. I don't know what became of that tiger, but yeah, I loved it.
What you've let that tiger go? Oh my goodness!
So much of my childhood. Every time we moved, like my favorite books and comics, they're almost all of them are gone. I only have about 5 or 6 books left from my childhood, which I wish I had managed to keep more. But yeah, I used to take this tiger everywhere. Some people used to even call me Tiger. It was a bit like Calvin and Hobbes, if you know Calvin. So yeah, I mean, I've always loved tigers. I remember reading William Blake's poem, The Tiger, when I was at school. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. So, those experiences I had when I was very, very young have obviously stayed with me all my life and have eventually come out in the form of the book. So I think whatever you love when you are young, try and hold on to it. That might be the most important stuff you ever find in your whole life. Certainly, I think the books that we love when we are young are the most important books we will ever read. So if you like a book right now, hold on to it. Don't give it away. Lose it like I lost all my books. I do still have a few. I'll just show you one. There's this book, Watership Down, by a writer called Richard Adams, an amazing epic story about rabbits trying to survive in the wild. My mum gave me Watership Down when I was at school. She said, I've just read this. I think it's the best book ever. You must read it. And handed me this enormous 500-page long book. Well, as I read that book, I thought to myself, okay, my mum's right. This is the best book ever. And one day, I would like to try and write something that is even half as good as this. And I really do feel my life changed forever at that moment, because ever since then, that is what I have always wanted to do. So yeah, I believe books can change your life.
And you mentioned before about how you hope that maybe readers might come away from Tiger and think about how they can change the world themselves. Sort of a recurring theme throughout your books has been characters who discover a power within themselves and then understand their place in the world as a result of that. Why do you think this is something that you keep coming back to as a writer?
It's a really good question. I don't know. All I can tell you is I always write the story that I most want to read myself. And it just so happens that I love stories about characters who often start out seeming to be totally powerless and discover that they have these great powers inside them. The powers are never easy, though. The powers sometimes bring much more trouble than you would imagine, and are very, very hard for the characters to learn how to use them. But I just I just love that. I love stories about characters with powers. I read a lot of comics. I always have. I still do. So superpowers have been something that I've always been fascinated by. And Varjak-Poor, of course, it was a cat learning a secret martial art known only to cats. With Tiger, I wanted to try and write a kind of a power that we could all have, whoever we are. So there are powers like perception, how do you perceive the world? Imagination, putting yourself in the place of something or somebody who is not you. And creation, sort of imagining how things could be different and then bringing those other possibilities into reality. I think those are things we can all do. We all have the power of creation. We can all create stuff. And I think in Tiger, I wanted to write a scene where, for example, characters writing and drawing could be as exciting as a fight scene. I love a good fight scene, don't get me wrong, but could I make the idea of reading and writing and drawing as exciting as a brilliant fight scene? I mean, I did everything I could. So I think it just about works.
No, it does. I think it. Well, you also get a whopper of a fight scene as well. So you don't shortchange anyone who's just come to see a tiger in battle, which is
no, it's true. There are some epic fight scenes as well. I couldn't resist. But yeah, I would love it if somebody were to come away from Tiger and think, okay, I could go away and create something like that myself and feel excited about it in that way. So yeah, I don't know. I just love superpowers. There's no.
I did really love it. The fact that the perception, imagination, creation, self-revelation, they're all things that are accessible to themes of the story. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I have one final question, which has been sort of looking through your books. You seem to be constantly outdoing yourself. So we start with a street cat discovering how to become a great warrior, and then in Phoenix we got this epic space battle, and now rather casually you've decided to tackle infinity with Tiger.
Infinity!
and I think going from cat to tiger, that's do you know, is this something you consciously do? You're constantly sort of thinking, right, I've done infinity this time, how on earth am I going to go even bigger than that? Or is it just been a sort of happy coincidence?
I think I am always wanting to push myself further and challenge myself more and try and do bigger and more interesting and more ambitious things every time. If I ever get to the point where I feel, yeah, that's it, I can't go any further than that, then I will probably just retire, because what would be the point? But yeah, I haven't got there yet. I mean, it is true. Tiger is a book that deals with infinity, but I don't think it has completely exhausted the subject of infinity. I think there could be more. They have only just begun, Adam and Zadie, to touch infinity. And if there really is an infinite number of alternate worlds out there in infinity, perhaps there could be an infinite number of stories about it too. So we'll see. I'm working on something new at the moment. It's still only it's less than a year since I began it, so in my time scale that's a very, very new and recent thing. I hope this one won't take 9 years, but it takes as long as it takes to make a book as good as you can possibly make it, and that is always my aim with every book. That's what I always want to do, make it the very, very best and most exciting that it can possibly be. So yeah, thank you. That is a lovely thing to hear about your work. I am always trying to make it better. I do believe Tiger is my best one so far, by quite a way. It felt like a big step up on anything I've done before. But I think
I also think the sort of it's such a big book in such a concise package. It's a bit like the holding infinity in the palm of your hand. It's got that fantastic overreaching arch, and yet also being a very small story. And I mean that in a great compliment about Adam and Zadie sort of embracing more of their ancestry as well. So yeah, but thank you very much, and thank you for the tantalizing tease about there may be more infinite versions of infinity out there. So I think retirement is a long way off. But thank you very much for your time today.